I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees meeting for Thursday, July 7th, 2022. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
President Ballerini.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos.
Here.
Trustee Clarity.
Here.
Trustee Hannan.
Here.
Trustee Marshazga.
Here.
Trustee Pollock.
Here.
Village Manager Francis.
Here.
Village Attorney Mars.
Here.
Also present, Village Clerk Soul.
Thank you. First on the President's report, on the consent agenda tonight, there is a line item, which is K, which is talking about competitive bidding and waiving some charges, and I just wanted to go over one of the charges, and that's the charge for D. Ryan Tree Service and the costs that we have incurred so far and what we have tried to do with as it pertains to the storm damage. The change order for D. Ryan Tree Service was $450,000. I talked to Mr. Collins, and as of today, they have moved approximately 7,000 yards of, or they have 7,000 yards of chip generated to date. 76 trees have been removed. 275 hanging branches have been removed, with another 85 to be addressed yet. PW has worked long hours, and I want us to recognize their efforts. Dan has done a wonderful job, not only organizing the people at Public Works, but all the other municipalities that came to help. He did all that. Our intern, Elizabeth Hawk, our crew leader, Moran, and Mary Beth, who is the telephone operator or the telephone person at the Public Works. She was taking a ton of calls. And finally, of course, Mike Collins, who his dedication and respect for our trees is always on display and is appreciated. We met with the villages of Westchester, Bellwood, North Riverside, and Maywood, representatives of Mike Zaleski, Cook County Commissioner Frank Aguilar, Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, representatives from the Illinois Emergency Management Association, Cook County Emergency Management Association, to see exactly what we could do in order of any kind of disaster relief. We would need 23 structures under FEMA, and they have to be either underinsured or uninsured, and a little over $20 million in spending. Now, they told us we can bulk all of our communities together, but we're not even close to the structures. The spending was almost close because Katrina Steele from ComEd was there, and she said that they're above $10 million that they have spent. But then the representative told us that ComEd's expenditure is not included, so it's just our expenditures in all the communities. So we would not be getting anywhere near the $20 million for FEMA relief, and Illinois doesn't have anything. So we tried, and we will continue to keep trying, and hopefully something will come as we go. So that's my report for tonight. Ms. Francis?
Thank you, President Ballerini. On that same topic, as it relates to the storm damage, at the previous meeting, I did thank certain communities, but after that evening, I received additional communication from other communities that ended up coming to Riverside, so I just wanted to recognize all of those agencies in their entirety, and also give special recognition to Cook County Department of Transportation, who provided 224 hours of assistance to the Village of Riverside. Western Springs, 96 hours, which they are a small community similar to us, and so seeing that they would allocate so much of their manpower is quite appreciated. And then also some of my former coworkers and colleagues in Glencoe allocated 88 hours of assistance as well. So in addition to those communities, we had Countryside, Forest Park, Highland Park, Libertyville, LaGrange, Clarendon Hills, Rolling Meadows, Oswego, Warrenville, and North Aurora. Those communities all collectively provided a total of 684 hours of assistance to the Village of Riverside, and a total of 20 pieces of equipment. And so to kind of put it in perspective, our team put in over 172 hours of overtime. If we would have just been reliant on our staff, we would still, and we still are working on certain pieces as of today, but we would be nowhere near where we are today. And so that should be commended. Our team in the Public Works Department, and also our neighbors, colleagues, and friends that came and helped us. So that is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is resident comments for non-agenda items. Do we have anybody? Yes, sir, please.
Hi, I'm Patrick Groveland, West Avenue. Since there's an item on the agenda about the Groveland Levy, I thought I'd like to ask about what is the status of that project? Where do things stand? What's the current timeline, if there is one? As well as, are there any milestones that have to be achieved, and when do they have to be achieved?
Jessica just received a 1,200-page letter from the Army Corps the other day. I don't think she's been able to digest it all in the last 2 days, but can you give us a brief update?
I have not, and a lot of it has a lot of engineering, which then we will turn over to our village engineer. The information I do have readily available is that for the plans and specifications to do that work, they are at approximately $400,000, which is a little over 50% of the $769,000 allocated for that piece. And so the next steps that they have is they'll continue with the plans and specifications for the project. They will also be reinitiating the Section 106 coordination, which we'll be working closely with our Preservation Commission on. And then there will be discussions we will have a public meeting once we have this information reviewed by our engineer and have a presentation to the village board and to the public. And then as that progresses, talking about easements and things of that sort. And so, as is noted in the agenda, as you mentioned, there's an item, it talks about property acquisition and easement acquisition. And MWRD was, they typically don't do this, but they agreed to modify the Village of Riverside's agreement so where we can work with our residents directly on this particular piece. And I think it's very important not only to residents but also to our board, because we can effectively more communicate with you, sit down with you, talk to you individually about what they're looking at doing, you know, the impact versus you having someone from the federal government sitting with you and doing those types of things. So there's every effort to try to get this information and get it ready so that we can sit down with residents, especially those significantly impacted over on West Avenue, to have a good, productive conversation and have those materials for you. And as soon as we have that, we will be scheduling those meetings, sir.
Is there any timeline, though, or is it just open-ended? This has been going on for a long time. It's a lot to have holding over our heads.
I understand. So as soon as I can go through the materials that we've received and work with our engineer, I would say late summer, early fall, because it's a lot of documents to go through. But if I can get through them sooner and make sure that they can get through them sooner, then we'll coordinate as soon as possible. Obviously, anytime that the federal government is working on certain projects, they work on a longer timeline. I understand your frustration. They were going through a staffing shortage, and so those processes that we were waiting on them to complete lingered a lot longer than I think both they would have liked, and definitely longer than we would have liked.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Will there be any reaching out to the residents on West Avenue, or is that only through public meetings?
No, there will be. Once we have, right now, I don't have the elevations, or it could be in that 1,200-page document. I haven't had a chance to go through it completely. We haven't had an opportunity. We need the surveyor to come back out, because how they lined up the posts and poles, they didn't do as we asked, and what we are looking at is outside of their capacity. And so we're going to be working with our Public Works Department then to run the line so that we have an understanding of the elevation absolutely for the residents on West to be able to see, but also the village board to see that particular impact, Preservation Commission to see that impact, and the public as a whole.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Ethan, if you would.
Yeah. Approve voucher list of bills, July 7th, 2022. Review and file community development, April and May monthly reports. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, June 16th, 2022. Review and file Parks and Recreation Board regular meeting minutes, May 23rd, 2022. Review and file Historical Commission regular meeting minutes, May 16th, 2022. Review and file Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes, May 25th, 2022. Review and file Landscape Advisory Commission regular meeting minutes, May 10th, 2022. Review and file Landscape Advisory Commission special meeting minutes, May 13th, 2022. Review and file Riverside TV Commission regular meeting minutes, May 9th, 2022. A motion to approve an engagement letter with Clark Baird Smith, LLP, and to appoint Kelly A. Coyle as the Public Safety Employee Benefits Act hearing officer. A resolution waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the village manager to enter into various purchase orders for fiscal year 2022. And a resolution authorizing the village manager to extend a contract with Paramedic Services of Illinois, Incorporated, to provide ambulance billing and collection of fees for ambulance services rendered by the Village of Riverside Fire Department.
Thank you, Ethan. Do any of these items need to be removed by any of the trustees? Hearing none, I would like to ask for a motion.
Motion made.
Motion by Trustee Gallegos, second.
Second.
Second by Trustee Marszewska. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marszewska.
Aye.
And Trustee Pollock.
Motion carries. Thank you. Department, board, and commission reports. Director Melchiotti.
Evening, President Ballerine, Village Trustees, and Manager Francis. I wanted to take an opportunity to provide a brief update on the Parks and Recreation Department. As you're aware, after a challenging year in 2020, we had a very successful recovery in 2021, which allowed us to not only contribute to our capital projects, but the department was able to assign $150,000 toward the repayment of the 43 East Quincy build-out. This far exceeds the $25,000 that is outlined in the repayment schedule. The department also increased its program offerings substantially, which we will continue to do, along with special events. Through securing sponsors, we were able to fund additional concerts, and we have added smaller pop-up events to complement the events that the community has come to expect. We have entered into a cooperative maintenance plan with the Public Works Department, utilizing seasonal employees to provide a higher level of maintenance at the playground and ball fields. I'm also happy to announce that all of the maintenance equipment that we have purchased to accomplish this is battery operated. I've also worked with the village clerk Sol that on Riverside Responds, we have created a pathway for residents to contact the recreation department easier if they have issues in playgrounds or courts or ball fields. I'm in contact with many recreation departments and park districts in the area, and all have experienced hiring challenges and staffing shortages, which have limited the amount of participants that they can serve or have impacted their hours of operations. I am happy to state that our department has not only been able to accommodate all of our typical summer activity participation through hiring and our partnership with D96, we are also able to expand our participation, allowing almost everyone that was on a waiting list to participate in our programs this summer. We were even able to extend our Kinder Kids program so that it would run seamlessly into summer camp to provide coverage for working parents. We were also able to pivot quickly during the recent storm, and while the impact to the community is still being felt, there was no interruption to our programming or our coverage. The Parks and Recreation Board has been working on a 501c3 foundation, and the Parks and Recreation Board, along with our trustee liaison, Kristen Evans, they have been working on this foundation that will allow the department to provide scholarships to the community for all of our programs and also be able to fund special projects within Riverside. We will be scheduling a special meeting in the near future, but anyone interested in being a part of this foundation, either on the board or as a committee member, can reach out to our board chairperson, Elizabeth Koss, or to the department. And you're also welcome to attend the meeting. We offered registration for our summer camp fully online this year, and I'm pleased to inform you that we will be doing so again for our before and after school program. We understand that working parents and those with busy schedules may not be able to come into our offices during our business hours, even though they are welcome to do so. So we wanted to make it as convenient as possible for you to register. Information will be posted soon regarding that program. And again, we are proud to partner with District 96 to accomplish our shared goal of serving all children in the community. Lastly, our July 3rd and 4th events were very well attended and enjoyed by all. These are large-scale events that are accomplished in a short span of time. They are only possible through the efforts of all village staff and departments. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank village departments and staff, along with the staff of the Parks and Recreation Department, who work behind the scenes and allow me the opportunity to present these highlights to you tonight. Thank you.
Is there any question for Director Melchiotti? Yes.
With the expansion of full-day kindergarten with District 96, is it safe to assume that we'll be sunsetting the Kinder Kids program, and if that's run through Parks, and if that is the case, are we preparing for increased enrollment in our aftercare program because of these kindergartners coming in, and also for days off from school, that, you know, a different population of students that are participating in those instead of aftercare?
We have made plans to encompass all of those kindergarten children within our existing before and after school program. The before and after school program spans a large span of ages now, so all of the activities are age appropriate, so we will have kindergarten specific activities for those children, but we will staff accordingly, and we are making preparations for that. We're also turning to more parent-toddler classes, so the younger age groups that are not captured by full-day kindergarten, we are ramping up programming for them out of the water tower building, more kind of drop-in programs, parent-taught playtimes, things of that nature.
Great. May I ask one? The only other question I have for you is, you mentioned a little bit about some allocation of time from Public Works in terms of maintenance. I think this is an issue that matters to our residents. I was wondering if you could just detail a little bit some of the increased maintenance the residents might notice or see around, and what the goals are, and weigh in on whether you think the allocation of time will be adequate for maintenance of our facilities.
Right now, I'm working closely with Director Tab to, because it just started this summer, so we are working out the schedule between special projects along with the daily maintenance tasks. As you know, weeding of the parks is pretty much a full-time job on its own, so that allocates a lot of hours. Also, the two issues that we received the most feedback going into the summer were playground conditions, mostly weeds, and the baseball fields. So I'm happy to say that we've addressed those problems, but that does not encompass all of the maintenance issues. So that's what I'm working on now with Director Tab, to address more of the tennis court issues, painting, equipment, things of that nature. And now that the regular season baseball has ended, we can allocate more time to some of those other projects as opposed to the ball fields. So that's the kind of schedule it's working out now. But up before then, the natural progression of this kind of co-op was the department had always hired seasonal maintenance. That became more and more challenging because we were essentially competing with our Public Works Department for seasonal maintenance. So the bulk of the maintenance fell on the department, most of which I tried to accomplish myself. We realized that wasn't providing the level that we needed. So going into this, Village Manager Francis, Director Tab, and myself entered into this cooperative where we would utilize the services of a seasonal. So I would say the model is kind of a work in progress, but we are addressing the issues that we received feedback on, and I also think that we are more able to react and respond to issues that come up. So while I do expect that to get better and fall into more of a routine, I think it's working well in its inception.
Thank you. I know for a fact that Director Malchiotti personally has been out to the tennis courts to sweep glass off the courts, and I appreciate your efforts, but think that this partnership with Public Works makes a lot of sense, and I look forward to hearing from you at a future update whether the allocation of time is adequate.
Absolutely.
That's all I have on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Are there any other reports this evening? Okay. Then we will move on to pending business. I'd like to is Karen talking about something else other than parking? Okay. So I'd like to take it out of order if I could. Number E, business parking discussion. I would respectfully ask this to be tabled until the next meeting. I have a call in with a couple of the Masonic Lodge and some other things that I'm going to try to work with and try to talk to them. So if there's no issues, I'd like to table that till August. Okay.
No objection.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Back to pending business in order, a resolution allowing staff to review and approve hardscape permit applications for carriage walk installation at properties without driveways. Manager Francis.
Thank you. Director Tab is out of town, so I am taking the lead on this particular item. It is noted that both on this was an item that was directed by the board for both LEC and Preservation Commission to review. On February 17th, 2022, the village board had requested this to evaluate hardscape applications specifically as it applies to carriage walks, get the feedback of both Preservation and Landscape Advisory Commission, and then bring back a final recommendation to the board as to whether or not this particular item could be handled administratively. As it is noted, I will actually read the two various motions and what was approved by both LAC and Preservation for the record. There was a motion by Commissioner Rubin to allow carriage walk installation applications for properties without driveways to be reviewed and approved internally by staff and not require commission review, and it was seconded by Commissioner Juster. There was one nay by Commissioner Coombs, but there were 3 ayes by Commissioner Rubin, Juster, and Plunkett, and Chairperson Lambros, Schaff, and Bars were both absent. Thank you. And so therefore, the motion carried. With regard to Preservation, the motion was made by Commissioner Walsh to allow for internal review and approval by staff for those properties without driveways that apply for carriage walk installations, and it was seconded by Commissioner Seymour. It was a unanimous vote, and so therefore the motion carried. I would like to note that if the board does approve this particular item, at the next board meeting, we would have an ordinance, because there is one piece as it relates to the hardscape section within the village code where we would need to make that small modification to make sure that it is clear that carriage walks are precluded from that particular application process, and that is handled administratively.
Is there any questions from anybody? We have so few of these that, when's the last time it's only basically houses that back onto 31st Street or houses with alleys, and I can't even think of one. Hearing no discussion, if I can have a motion?
Motion made.
Motion by Mr. Gallegos, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Clarity. Any further discussion? Okay, Ethan, if you would, please.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga. Trustee Pollock.
Motion carries. B, a motion to approve sidewalk ADA crosswalk installation at Turtle Park and Big Ballpark. Director Melchiotti.
Good evening. As you know, at the March 21st Parks and Recreation Board meeting, the Parks and Recreation Board, as well as my staff, as well as myself, discussed numerous options for the green space grant and improvements, and they ultimately proposed creating an athletic field at Indian Gardens and providing ADA crosswalks and sidewalk access into Turtle Park and Big Ballpark from Long Common and Nuttall Roads. At the time, at that village board meeting, village board directed further review from the Preservation and LAC commissions. They did review, they had recommendations. Those recommendations were essentially, the biggest concerns were any removal or damage to trees, which I'm happy to say there will be no removal of trees. And on the preservation side, the high curbs were also a concern, which I'm also happy to announce that the area that they will be providing on Nuttall Road, that entire area will be lowered, so there will be no need for the high curbs. Also the path of the actual sidewalk was under review. That was the path meanders to avoid the removal of any trees, and also takes into consideration the drip lines of all of the trees, so they are centered on that. So there'll be minimal damage to any roots of trees and also no removal. This feedback was brought back to the Parks and Recreation Board, who discussed the feedback and their original proposal, and they unanimously recommended the two projects to the village board.
Thank you. There is one other discussion item on this, and that is preservation. Discuss the changing to a cast iron plate at a cost of a four-way, I mean, if I can do math, a four-way intersection with 8 plates is $12,000 using cast iron plates versus $2,800 using the current plates we have now. So when we look for a motion, we would like to discuss whether we want to stay with the way we have now or move on to the cast iron plates. There are roughly 300 crosswalks throughout town, and approximately 220 of them already have the plastics. So those would have to be replaced as they become defective. So that's everything. Is there any discussion?
I'll start.
Shoot.
I definitely would like to thank all of the commissions for their input on this project. I think it will give us, it has given us a better result overall. It just, taking the time to look at it and analyze it, and I think the crosswalks will definitely be a needed improvement to the area. On the subject of the cast iron plates, I know they are pricey. However, they will last forever, and they will not need to be replaced. As you can see from what is happening with the plastic ones that were installed all around town, they fade, they crack, and they're not really particularly attractive, and they don't look like they belong. So, I understand the issues of expense and prioritization. However, I think in the long run, if you know that you are going to have these ADA crosswalks and you're committed to them and you're not going to change them, then this would be a worthwhile investment and upgrade for our entire village over time, as needed.
Do do the math and tell me what the metal plates cost per.
The metal plates are $1,500 each as of right now. And then the plastic are $350.
How many plastic plates have we had any that have gone bad out of the?
Yes, they do pop up, especially with different snow removal operations, so it does happen. I couldn't give you an exact, how many times we have to replace a given one. It just also depends on the high traffic area, so, but we do have to replace them, whether it's snow removal operations in close proximity to the road or just wear and tear over time.
So we're looking at roughly 80,000 plus another 40,000, so $120,000 difference, 120,000 if we do metal, correct? If we did all 220, that's
There's more
the
than
80,
one in
the
a
80.
crosswalk, right?
Yeah, but if the 80 that are left, if we did those in the metal, it would represent $120,000 more, just to do those, plus the ones we have to replace. So just so you get a handle, I just want to get a handle on the cost.
So, yes, and so this would be over time, and so we're thinking of today's dollars versus future dollars, so that changes things, and, but just also recognizing there may be times in the future where we change where crosswalks are, so we may eliminate where, so an example is, there could be a crosswalk that goes into someone's driveway. Well, that's not ADA compliant, and so we'd actually remove that particular curb cut. And so just kind of recognizing that, Director Tab did a good job of trying to get a handle of how many crosswalks we're really talking about, and it's an approximate based on the GIS data and all the information he was able to pull. But there is the argument of, longevity too.
I just have a question. Are the metal ones any more prone to ice or slipperiness, or do they function the same as the plastic ones?
From what I'm aware of, they would function the same.
Any other questions? Can someone make a motion, please?
I'll make the motion with the cast iron plates.
And I will second the motion.
Motion by trustee Gallegos, second by trustee Marshaga. Any further discussion?
Can we break that out separately?
We could, if you would amend your motion to be just the walk first.
Okay, fine. I'll separate my motion.
Okay. You still seconding the motion?
I still second the motion.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table for the installation of the sidewalk only. Any further discussion? Okay. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans?
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos?
Aye.
Trustee Clarity?
Aye.
Trustee Hannan?
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga?
Aye.
Trustee Pollock?
Okay. Second thing on the table is whether we're going to use the metal crosswalks or the plastic ADA crosswalks. I would need a motion and a second.
Motion to use the cast iron crosswalks.
And
Motion
second.
by trustee Gallegos, second
Second.
by trustee Marshaga. Any discussion?
I liked it.
Please.
So today we are approving a cast iron section for Turtle Park.
Correct. But
That's
this-
it.
this
It's not
will-
like a long-term commitment of $120,000 or whatever it's going to be.
So
I think this would be the precedent to move forward.
you're giving staff direction that the expectation of the board is that in our future bid specs, we would incorporate that. And so if that changes, whether it's with this board or future boards, then staff would be notified, and then we'd modify our specs accordingly.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Hanna.
I guess, I don't know if I have enough information. I know my experience has been walking over the regular, whatever you call it, the rubber or whatever it is, see those everywhere. That seems to be the standard. The question was asked, how are the metal plates in the ice? How are they in the snow? How long do they act? Do they last? I'm skeptical that it's forever. I just don't know if we have enough information to make the commitment of over, $120,000 at this point. without that information. So I'm a little, trying to understand what actually we're doing. Going to Trustee Evans' point, if this is a commitment to do this throughout the village, plastic seems to be the standard, and I'd like to know why we're deviating from the standard other than optics. I'm concerned about performance slippage. We get a lot of comments about the cobblestones in town. When it gets icy, when it gets snowy, people slipping on those. It was well intended, but I don't want to make the same mistake by going with the metal.
I have a question.
Go.
If we approve this tonight, how soon before those cast iron plates are installed?
When they do the sidewalk, which would be the fall, right, when they do the sidewalk?
So if I may offer a compromise or an alternative for the board, is that we could put in an alternative item in the bid specs asking for the cost, because this is an estimate based on what we're seeing in the market right now. And then when we have the final bid award for the board to accept, then we will have the detail as it relates to the cost differential between the two. And then we'll be able to collect that additional data as it relates to slipping, if there's data out there related to whether or not they pop because of the ice, and that type of impact. Obviously, we didn't pull all that information for this particular meeting, so it gives staff a little bit more time to get that so that the board can have answers related to it.
And I'd also like to add to that, if we can find out what our replacement rates of the 220 that we put down.
I'll do my best to.
I mean,
I will.
ballpark. I mean,
Yes, I will.
I'm sure he knows somewhat.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we should vote on it, am I correct?
Well, are we going
Or-
to table it, though, once we get more?
Or
Right. So if the motioner and seconder
seconder?
are open to Manager Francis's proposal that we, instead of deciding tonight that we're going to do one or the other, but instead we bid it out with the alternative included while additional data is collected, and then make a decision when you have that all before you. You could withdraw your motion and second, and that would be the motion.
I think I would withdraw my second.
And I would say we'll wait so we can table it or withdraw, whatever is the proper way to
Okay.
go about it until the next meeting, or whenever you have the information before us. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. So you need to, did we call the roll on the?
Well, if there's a consensus that we're going to bid it,
No, I'm talking about, did we call the roll on the
side?
sidewalk? I'm sorry.
Ethan?
You did call the roll on the
Okay.
side.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll get that further information on the side when you do the bid specs. Thank you for that suggestion.
Sure.
The next is a resolution authorizing authorizing the execution of a First Amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Riverside and the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago for design, construction, operation, maintenance of the Groveland Avenue levee improvements relative to Groveland Avenue levee project. Manager Francis went over this pretty in depth. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Just the one item that is important to note. So on, let me find the exact date, on November 18th, 2021, which was Resolution 2021 R54, the village board approved the funds from MWRD coming through the village and then us paying Army Corps because Army Corps had changed, the federal government had changed their particular procedures as it relates to payments. And so given this new change as it related to acquisition and real estate costs and MWRD allowing that, they did not execute our agreement in November, they held off. And so basically this new resolution would replace the one that was approved in November of 2021. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. And so just so that we also have it as a matter of public record. So now both of those items are incorporated into the resolution that is before you.
Is there any other questions? Sir, do you have any questions before I ask for a motion? Yes, ma'am. Please, if you could stand to the thing.
Hi, I'm Chris Morong. I live on West Avenue as well. this kind of goes along with the timeline that my husband raised. How much time elapsed from the time that you signed that agreement in November of last year to when you learned from the federal government that the procedures had been changed? And how could that have been communicated to us until now?
So for the federal government piece, that was more of an administrative item that wouldn't have impacted residents. It was more of how MWRD was sending the check. So instead of sending the check to Army Corps of Engineers, they had to pivot and now send the check to the Village of Riverside. So that didn't impact the project whatsoever because they had already made the first payment as required. And then Army Corps notified us, okay, well, you need to change your agreement with MWRD. And so we did pivot and get that approved. And so we were waiting on MWRD on that one.
Again, when did that happen? I know you're saying it didn't impact the residents directly, but I'm just curious, like how this has been going, the back and forth communication. What's the timing been like? Have you had to nag them to get you details that are needed for this project? I'm trying to get a sense of that. Do you understand where I'm at?
I do,
Okay,
and
thanks.
I do understand your frustration because yes, there has had to have, I, myself, and other staff members have had to follow up with Army Corps because they've had staffing shortages, and so they've had a number of projects. They've hired additional people. I am not making excuses because I understand your frustration. I myself was frustrated at there not being any movement. So anytime we've learned something and we've gotten information, we've acted in short order. So I've worked with the village attorney, Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, to draft and work with MWRD to provide the modification language. And so we're dealing with multiple agencies. It's not just the Village of Riverside. As soon as we get the details that we need from those different agencies, we work quickly then to get it on an agenda if it requires board action. As it relates, so just to follow up on this particular change as it relates to acquisition. So now is the next step is to look at hiring a company to help us with, instead of waiting for Army Corps of Engineers to help us with the surveying piece, to provide, figure out what the value is. But we have to go through MWRD's competitive bidding process, which takes time. So some of these different layers, the village has to make sure we're going through because we're not only have to follow the federal government requirements, but we also have to follow MWRD, which are different from what statutorily, if we were just doing a project on our own, would be required. Does that all make sense?
It'll have to make sense, but I have to, again, it makes sense that we're hearing it here and now, but those sticks were put in our yards last October. So while it would have been nice to have known that some of this was going on from October of last year until today. You know what I'm saying? I know you're all doing certain tasks, you have certain procedures you're following, but we're in the dark on all this. It's not transparent to us. It's procedurally correct for you. You're doing your jobs as you see to do them, but again, you can hear it in my voice. This has been almost 5 years. Think about it. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks.
And believe me, we understand your frustration. Every week, Groveland is on my list, and I ask the manager for an update. And, every week she says, I've called Jeff. And then all of a sudden, 1,200 pages show up. So, I apologize for the delay. I've been listening to this Groveland for a long time also, so I don't live there, so I know you're frustrated and rightfully so. So we will do our best to continue to communicate with you and continue to keep Army Corps' feet to the fire to keep this moving along.
And please know that this MWRD change in their agreement is somewhat unprecedented. They usually do not allocate money for real estate acquisition unless unless it's going to another party. But we felt it was very important that we work with our residents directly on easements, and we knew that we could do it more effectively and efficiently, or else this would linger longer than we would like. And so now that we have this in place, we can start moving on some of these other pieces and not wait for the Army Corps.
So this is a good thing. This actually is very good. We met with our MWRD commissioner and discussed it with her, and it was much more advantageous for us to make the communication rather than the Army Corps making communication with the residents, because we could move quicker than obviously the Army Corps. Plus I think Jeff has moved or changed and come back around, or he's got multiple projects.
He does have many different projects that have been allocated, but they have allocated more staff to his team in this area, in the Great Lakes region now.
Okay, any other questions from any board members? Hearing none, if I can have a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion as well.
Motion by Mr. Gallegos, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Evans. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Motion carries. Next on our agenda is an ordinance amending Section 10-7-3, the Village of Riverside zoning ordinance, relative to deck accessory structures in residential zoning districts. Ms. Monroe.
Hello, good evening. So as President Ballerine described, this is a very, what we hope is a simple revision of our zoning code related to the height of decks in residential districts. So essentially what had occurred was earlier in the year, the village had received multiple requests from residential properties for a variation to the height of their deck. The existing code permits only a deck up to 4 feet in height from grade. And so these, for whatever reason, structurally made it challenging for them to keep in conformity to code and allow a deck that would allow egress from their property. So there were 2 variations granted earlier this year related to this request. And when more than one of these requests occur, the village has historically brought them forward to the village board or for the Planning and Zoning Commission to reevaluate the code pertaining to that issue. And so we did bring a public hearing at the June 22nd Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and they did recommend with a vote of 5-0 for a revision to that section of the code. I will just highlight a couple of items as would be found in the finding of fact, just so there's a understanding of how they arrived at this decision. I'll also note that the language that is proposed is just 1073D2, so it's just one line in the code that will read, decks shall not be higher than the elevation of the first floor of the principal building. So even though they are removing, or we're removing the height at a specific feet from the ground, they do have to adhere to building code standards, and it also prevents or discourages decking above the first floor of a building. So you won't see like second-story decks being constructed. That's their intent. So if you have a window or a door underneath a deck that exists, it can allow decks in that condition on residential properties to then become conforming with this code change. So just a couple of items here. As I said, they voted 5-0 in favor of the motion to recommend approval of this text amendment. They were in agreement that the proposed amendment would promote general comfort, convenience, and welfare of the Village of Riverside. There's a gain to the public because the change would limit potential hardships for property owners of Riverside. They found that the change in code is consistent with plans and our other zoning ordinances. They were in consensus that the change would clarify existing requirements. The consensus was that the change doesn't favor a particular applicant or group or properties. The proposed amendment does require or provide greater ability to achieve zoning intent. It will reduce the number of non-conforming residential properties, and as I said again, that this is consistent with the overall structure of the zoning ordinance as it exists. So if you choose to approve this text amendment, it will again read, decks shall not be higher than the elevation of the first floor of the principal building. I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Monroe? Hearing none, if I can have a motion and a second.
Motion made.
Motion by Mr. Gallego, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Marshaga. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ethan, if you'd please.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshaga.
Aye.
And Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Okay, we've passed on the business parking. That has been tabled. So new business. Approval to update the Riverside TV filming policy. Ms. Monroe.
Thank you. I'm just going to pull up a chair for this evening's items, so I'll see you quite a bit. Okay, so the discussion revolving around the Riverside TV filming policy was taking place at several meetings of the Riverside TV Commission. The idea conveyed from staff and just a general discussion had agreed that there were changes necessary to the policy, predominantly around a fee structure that was being used. The current policy, I should say, references a $75 an hour charge for our TV staff time. And so when there were several events proposed or requested for filming, the amounts quoted for implementing that policy essentially priced out some of those events and had discouraged some use of their services. There's also additional other changes that are recommended as far as just clarity of the application, the ordering in which the information is shared. We started by revising and kind of moving around the section that talks about applications themselves, followed by what happens when you're accepted and you go into production. So there's been a little bit of revision there. And I will just note a couple of highlights. So a lot of it is language clarification. However, I've got a million things open here. So I'll just state the couple of highlights that are included in the memo for the general awareness. There is for fees, there is currently a $200 deposit, and that will remain in effect. It was agreed in the policy that we'd change that $75 rate to a flat rate per hour and actual staff time. So based upon the staff performing a particular task, that fee would be, probably between $25 to $50, no more than that, just to kind of take into account any future years, essentially. So it would incrementally go up as our staff salary per hour would go up. If the estimate for filming an event doesn't exceed the $200 deposit, no additional fees would be charged. If the event is canceled with less than 48 hours notice, the deposit would stay with the village. However, if there's any future dates arranged, then the cancellation fees included in the original policy has been removed. It gives an example of, my memo gives an example of approximately what the costs would be under that circumstance. Our TV commission agreed that they should implement a flat $100 fee for the rental or use of our TV's equipment. So it's very typical of communities that provide TV filming services to use such a fee, private and public. And this would support repair or replacement costs, which wouldn't be covered by the West Central Cable Agency. We do get reimbursements from the West Central Cable Agency, but this would be some of the smaller items that it would cover and supplement the village's budget and our TV operations. And then we made a change. Instead of having a flat rate for $15 a DVD copy, we noted that it would be an actual hourly cost for the staff making that copy. So sometimes the digital copies are very quick and you can just email it off to someone. Other times you have to sit and wait for a couple of hours while whatever that production was is, created or generated for a copy. So we would account for that. Administratively, they would, we're noting that the timeframe for approval is just as soon as feasible. So there was a 14-day notice and approval timeframe, which was very challenging to meet, but depending on whether it needed village board approval at the time or village manager approval, or whatever the case was in determining whether they could accommodate it. So instead, they're going to be letting people know that it's been received, right, within that 14 days, and then they get back to them as soon as possible for an approval. Let me see, and then the only other thing, and the village manager and I have talked about this, is that there was discussion about allowing filming for organizations other than a 501c3. It would still require community-focused programming, non-political content, and leaves discretion to the village, but upon further discussion, just administratively, the manager and I have some concerns about what that leverage looks like in determining that, and it's probably best or recommended that we keep the 501c3 requirement. So there is a line in the draft policy that our TV commission did approve, but we would probably recommend to remove from implementation. And that's it. So if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I said, anybody have any questions for Ms. Monroe? Yes.
So I just wanted to confirm what you had said. So the bullet about how about allowing filming for organizations other than 501c3, so that's removed.
We would recommend that if the board also agrees. So it's our professional recommendation. We remove it. The commission, and we had some discussion about it. They left it in their final approval, but it would happen very rarely, and by keeping the 501c3, it allows us to really maintain that discretion of keeping certain organizations and removing the risk of whatever else that might come up.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if and when there is a motion, it would be to remove the bullet point under eligibility. It has community programming resources may, and I won't read the rest of it. There's a sub-point under that says programming resources in the sole discretion of the village may also be made available to other organizations. And that is the part that was concerning to me, because while you may be fine with what Jessica Francis's opinion is, that is whoever the village manager is at that point in time. And so that can change from individual to individual. And so that discretionary level can be a little concerning.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that fact? Where is that on here?
I'll make the motion.
To accept the policy and removing the bullet point.
Removing the bullet point, programming resources in the sole discretion of the village may also be made available to other organizations to be reimbursed according to this policy. So then the policy would strictly revert back to what it was previously as it relates to that section in 501c3.
Correct.
Is that good?
Yes.
And a
The
second?
removal?
Second by Mr. Hannan. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. B is an ordinance amending the village code of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, related to murals. Ms. Monroe.
Hello, good evening. So at the June 16th meeting, the village board approved discussing a grant, discuss the grant facade program. Riverside Arts Center asked for some public support in installing a mural on the site of their building. And during that discussion, we recognized that there would need to be sign code changes if this project or any other in the future were to install a mural on village, I should say on private property. So we propose a change to section 4-3-3 in definitions of our sign code, and the addition of a new section 4-3-17 that's specific to the standards for murals. So I should say before I leave it to any questions, is that the proposed language is based upon best practices within communities throughout the region, and give staff a general way to implement any proposed mural rather than counting it as a sign, which otherwise we would not have a mechanism to approve a mural. So if you have any questions, we can address those now.
Do we have any questions?
I will note for the board, there is a separate, a revised or updated ordinance.
Thank you.
In front of you. And based on review a little bit closer of the RAC request, and specifically as it related to where they currently have murals, we are recommending that item 1 be modified with regard to 1 exterior surface per building, and the 75% to allow for murals shall be exempt from any size requirement. And Michael, am I missing anything? Does that cover it?
Nope. No, we just simplified A1 to really only speak to the fact that they're exempt from any size requirements. You can have more than 1 surface per building, and there is no limitation to space on that surface.
Thank you. That was my only question, so that works.
I have another question, and that is with respect to, I believe it's in section 2B that talks about, or B2 that talks about the permit requirements. There's language in there that says, the permit application shall include a depiction of the proposed mural, including size and any other information required by the village. Is the intent with this loose language that, you know, internally you will develop a list of, you know, specifications that you will require of applicants? And I'm thinking particularly of like building elevations and renderings of the art that is proposed. You know, the materials that, you know, to be used, whether it's a certain type of paint with a certain type of finish over it, or whether it's going to be hand tiled or applied, if how. I mean, is that the intent behind the broad language, that you will then develop those criteria?
Mr. Mars?
Yes, this is the type of language that we put in ordinances when we intend to develop an application form, as opposed to trying to list everything in the ordinance, and then if you change it, you have to revise the ordinance. So this gives staff the ability to, based on this and other experiences they may have, to develop an application to ask all those things.
That's terrific, thank you.
Hannah?
And let me just preface these comments that I am a big fan of what they're proposing at the Arts Center. I think it would be a great addition. My concern is murals that include words or slogans, those would be permitted as currently drafted. And there's no policing of any sort of content, is that correct?
address that particular question.
No, if you go back to the definition of mural, it says it's a picture or photograph painted or applied directly on a wall in which in no way identifies a product or contains any commercial messaging, advertising, logos, or business identification.
Right, but it could have a political message, it could have an offensive message, it could have a highly offensive picture, and there's nothing we can do. And I go back to, I don't know if you've been to Belfast, but depending on which side of the spectrum you are, your blood pressure will be up one way or another walking down the streets. You know, and I know we can't
Right, that
Police
gets into
content.
First Amendment issues that, you
But
know,
my recommendation would be simply, pictures, not words.
The picture or photograph painted. I guess you can have a photograph of words, I guess.
Yeah.
That's where you're getting? Okay.
We add certain languages, no.
Right, so I guess saying no words is content neutral, so I would be okay with that if you guys were amenable.
Okay. Would you like to make that motion?
Sure, I would like to, a motion to approve this as amended to include the definition of mural, that it does not contain any words.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll make that second.
Hey, any further discussion?
I'll just say that I'm very excited about having more art in the downtown district.
Thank you. Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. C, gentlemen. A resolution authorizing a temporary use for outdoor dining, execution of a license agreement and/or indemnification agreement for use of public property and construction of certain improvements, outdoor dining area. Vincente Ambrosia, DBA Cubanito Express. Ms. Monroe.
Okay, I will start by introducing this topic. Yes, so we have been, appreciative of the recent opening of Cubanito Express on Harlem Avenue, and they approached the village about opening a temporary outdoor dining area along Herrick Road, adjacent to the building where the restaurant is sited. The outdoor area is kind of out the door and around the side of the building. It's approximately 11 by at most 50 feet to the rear parking drive aisle area. And so the intent is for approval up to that amount. However, just based on practical construction concerns, they may end up needing to modify that area just slightly based on construction need. But their plan is to install some pavers, improve the grade of that area. Currently, it's a landscaped kind of buffer around the corner. It is public right-of-way, so it's a unused area of easement along public right-of-way. And they would shape that into a space where they'll put 6 to 8 tables, depending on size allowed. 37 inches square was proposed for purchase, and their idea also is to place fencing along the side, a little bit of lighting at a later point in time. And as all temporary outdoor dining requirements, they would need to follow those per this resolution. Tables, chairs, appurtenances would be removed between December and March, or if required by the manager at any time. We have certain regulations where they wouldn't be allowed to have the dining before 6 a.m. or after 11 p.m. And they were required to have a minimum level of insurance, which they've already put into play and provided to us. This isn't reducing an open portion of the sidewalk or public or private sidewalk, as none exists there currently. And by them proposing to fence the area, it would reduce, well, I should say it would protect slightly from traffic along Harlem Avenue and also not impede the public way for any materials or other things in the way. So I want to just open it to you guys to explain and introduce yourselves, and then we can take any questions.
Please.
Good evening, guys. My name is Cesar Ambrosio. I'm one of the owners at Cubanito Express. I really appreciate the opportunity that you guys have brought us and all the support from all the residents at Riverside. This is something that we were thinking, me and my brothers, to maybe grow a little bit more and also to help the view of Harlem. I think it's something that will help the Harlem Avenue. We also did the planters, and we're trying to work with you guys, do the best that we can do, and well, basically that's something. That's it.
Yep.
Is there any questions for the gentleman?
One question, just on location. Has there been any communication to the neighbors down Herrick on the proposed plan or any input from them?
We have talked to many people. We don't know exactly their address. I mean, they tell us they live in the Riverside area. They're very excited. They like the idea. I don't have any names available. I don't have any addresses available, but mostly I would say like 65% of our clientele, it's mostly Riverside residents. So we have talked to them about it.
And I have one question. You did discuss this with a landlord, I assume. That's okay. I mean, the side of that building is in. I've walked by there. It looks like he just threw stones and all kinds of stuff back there, and it's in disrepair at best. So it'll definitely be a improvement to what's there now for sure, and also spark some interest to Harlem Avenue.
Yes, it would.
Yes, Mr. Mars.
I just wanted to call attention to the trustees that the resolution didn't make it into your packet, but it is at your seat. So that's what you're going to be voting on.
Okay. Is there any questions? Yes, Mr.
Not a question, but a comment.
Sure.
Under the next item on the agenda, the Economic Development Assistance application for this same project, it includes graphics with a lot of beautiful details on how they're constructing this, which I appreciate very much. That is not part of the resolution, and I'd like to suggest that we make that an exhibit to the resolution. One, so we know exactly what we're approving, and two, as an example of appropriate ways to do these types of outdoor dining areas.
Okay.
Just a
Yes.
question, does that, just to make sure I follow Trustee Pollak, does that require them to come back to us on this point if they change the chairs they picked or any of that?
I think Attorney Mars can help me with that. I would think that it could be broad enough just to state that it shall be consistent with the attached Exhibit B.
Yeah. If I could, I would suggest, yes, if we're going to make this change, we just add a whereas paragraph referencing this additional exhibit. And then in the approval portion of the resolution, we just say, with construction to be substantially in conformance with The attached depictions and any changes can be administratively approved by the manager, so long as they're consistent with the general intent.
Is that good, Mr. Pollak? Okay. If I can have a motion?
I'll make
a
that.
motion.
Motion by trustee Clarity. Second.
Second.
Second by trustee Evans. Any other discussion? Ethan, if you'd please call the roll.
Trustee
Did you-
Evans.
I'm sorry, did you have something?
Aye.
No.
Okay. Say, go ahead.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a motion to approve an economic development assistant grant for Cubanito Express. Ms. Monroe.
Okay. So before you is the related item. I should have prefaced the other item with this. This is specific to our economic incentive policy. So the board discussed and made revisions to that policy at the May 19th, 2022 meeting. And revisions to that policy allowed support for local businesses by providing economic assistance for a variety of improvements. Our interests are retaining and expanding, attracting commercial business, promoting our general economic development and growth. We're supporting redevelopment along key commercial corridors and increasing municipal revenue sources, incentives, and all of those sorts of things. So in that list of items that those funds could be used for includes things like outdoor dining areas, facade improvement, signage updates. And so because Cubanito Express is in the Harlem Business District number 2, we can use the business district funds to help support the proposed improvements, right? So what you just discussed and included as an exhibit for the approval for outdoor dining includes their proposal to put a patio dining area in according to building code, install fencing, planters, shielding some of the traffic, and any other, pedestrian or buffers along that dining area. The proposed design, for anybody kind of looking for an example, would be similar to that of downtown that you see over on Burlington Street for Choo-Choo. And based upon their initial proposal for fees, they've provided us estimates for $9,608, and we included in their total an approximate building permit fee that could be applied to this amount. They have conveyed that they have interest in a subsequent submittal for improvement or addition of signage replacement on the building. And according to this program, there's not either limitation on funding that can be reimbursed to them or a number of applications they can make. So the attachments are here and just kind of describing exactly what their proposal is. And we can answer any questions, myself or the owners.
Trustees, any questions?
No questions, just a comment that this seems like the exact purpose of the business district, and it seems consistent with the intent of those funds, and I'm grateful that you've chosen Riverside for your business, and I hope these funds will help you grow.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Like I said, me and my brother Lucio and I, we're very excited, and I really appreciate all your comments. And we're looking forward for this project too, also.
Thank you. And just for clarity, the monies that this is in business district money, and it can only be spent in this business district.
That is correct. So it's
not coming out of the general
reinvesting.
fund or anything like that.
Exactly. It's reinvesting in the business district by which it's generated. So this is exactly the purpose by which those business districts are created.
Perfect. And I'd like to thank you both for participating at the 3rd of July. That was, I heard a lot of wonderful reviews of the sandwiches as people were walking by.
Thank you.
Yes, Doug?
I apologize if this is in the staff report, I just missed it, but I see what the total cost of this project is, but I don't see what the request is for the grant. Is it for 100% or?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion
Second.
by trustee Clarity, second by trustee Gallegos. Any further questions before we call the roll? Hearing none. Ethan?
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making Riverside your home. We appreciate it, very much so.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
The next thing is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a Class A1 liquor license to 7-Eleven Incorporated. Clerk Sol.
Good evening. So on June 10th, the village received a Class A1 liquor license application from 7-Eleven for the property located at 2600 South Harlem. Class A1 licenses allow for the sale of beer, wine, and alcoholic liquor in sealed packages for consumption off premises. 2M Enterprises was a longstanding franchisee under 7-Eleven, and on June 28th, the agreement expired with 7-Eleven, and they will be taking over management of the property again. And so they're seeking a Class A1 liquor license because liquor licenses are not transferable. 2M Enterprises had a 2022 liquor license, and since 7-Eleven took back ownership, they have not been selling liquor. They've been storing it in their back in coolers. So that's what's before you tonight.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none, I can have a motion.
Motion made.
Motion by trustee Gallegos, second. Second by trustee Clarity.
I'll second the motion. I like Slurpees too.
Second by trustee Clarity. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ethan, if you could please call the roll.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Last thing under our new business tonight is an ordinance authorizing execution of a property purchase and sales contract and authorizing the purchase by the village of real property located within the village's Harlem Avenue Business District Number 2 at 363 East Burlington Road, Riverside, Illinois. Manager Francis.
Thank you, President Ballerine. So as you can see, staff's been really busy about trying to spur some economic activity within our various business districts that we've worked so hard to establish over the past couple of years. This business district number 2 was established in, June of 2020. And the discussions actually started in July of 2019. However, the process somewhat stagnated due to COVID. And that additional information as it relates to the supporting detail, the process that we had to go through to establish the business district is all detailed within the agenda history sheet. As it's noted in the agenda history sheet, we have the map which details the property boundaries of our business district, and 363 East East Burlington Street is within business district number 2. The village recently acquired the parking lot located at 3320 South Harlem Avenue, which is adjacent to the property that we are looking to acquire. Additionally, I will note, as part of the business district plan that was approved by the village board, and it is in place for the next 20 years, in which we assess 1% sales tax to then reinvest into that business district, we had a budget for land acquisition and assembly of $4.5 million as the village planned for future acquisition of properties with the intention of redevelopment. And so before you is the acquisition of 363 East Burlington. Staff, once it is acquired, staff would then work with to spur redevelopment on those 2 joint parcels, and then report back to the village board once we have a viable potential redevelopment agreement for both parcels, with a focus on enhancing the streetscape, enhancing that particular area within the village, and then also looking for keynotes of adding different gateway signage, which is important to us off of Harlem Avenue as well.
Thank you, Ms. Francis. Is there any questions? If I could, I would entertain a motion.
Motion made.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second.
I'll second.
Second by trustee Clarity. Any further questions? Any discussion? Hearing none. Ethan?
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Last thing on our agenda is trustee reports and communications. Do I have any reports or communications tonight from any of the trustees? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to motion for adjournment. The board does not have need for an executive session this evening, so I need a motion and a second for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second
Second.
by trustee Clarity. Mr.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Motion carries. Adjourned. Thank you.